This here is another viewer's broken gaming PC. Apparently, there's nothing wrong with it powering up. It loads into Windows just fine, but has trouble opening games and running them for any amount of time at all. I don't often approve forms from folks who submit literally 1 or 2 sentence descriptions of what's going on. You can see this is literally what the owner submitted, and it's not much. It's a very vague description of an issue that could be caused by a number of things. And judging by his PC spec description as well, he probably doesn't really know what all's going on here. And that's okay. Again, much like in the last episode of Fix or Flop, you can't expect everyone to know everything about PCs, right? That's why we are here, right? That's why a lot of you watching these videos are super helpful to your friends, right? Who maybe reach out and have questions about how their stuff is running. In this particular case here, I'm expecting that we either have some sort of like temperature issue or some sort of software conflict. For a game to not want to open in the first place, that could probably err more on the side of like a software conflict, but for a game to open and then quickly crash afterwards, that sounds like a potential thermal issue. I think we can get this one back up and running smoothly. Again, I expect it to power on. Beyond that, who really knows? I hope you'll stay with me.
Are you sitting on a gaming PC without an activated copy of Windows? Forget $100+ retail keys, instead snag an OEM Windows 11 key for a fraction of the price to unlock the full potential of the OS. Oh, and don't worry, they'll still remove those pesky activation watermarks. Just click the links below to get started today, and be sure to use our special offer code SKGS for a sweet discount on a variety of options including Windows 11 Pro, Home, and more.
Hello there, and welcome to Fix or Flop, a playlist where we attempt to fix broken gaming PCs like this one for free. We don't charge for labor or replacement hardware if necessary, and that's thanks to your viewership. I know I don't want to drag this out too long because folks who watch all the time are like, come on, get on with it, Greg. We've heard this 1,000 times. Thank you so much again for just clicking on these videos. Even if you're using an ad blocker, even if you're just running it in the background, I do not care. The click is huge. So again, thank you for that. It allows us to continue doing what we're doing. All right, let's try to power this thing on and see what happens. Now again, just a reminder, based on the description, I expect that this will power on, and I do expect that it will post. Beyond that though, I'm not too sure. It's possible this will only act up when attempting to load a game, which I suppose is a good thing in one sense. It's not, totally cooked. So that was a quick boot up there. It's been about 60 to 90-ish seconds, somewhere in that range. And it's just chugging along. I think this is a symptom of Windows being on a hard disk drive, which is a bit of a shame to see in 2026.
8 hours later.
I heard the Windows login sound about 2 minutes ago. Not exaggerating. This is pretty rough. He either has a ton of stuff on this Windows boot partition, and it's just taking forever for everything to load and initialize, or the hard drive is very old and likely very slow. Maybe a lower RPM, maybe like a 5400 RPM drive. There we go, finally. Golly. This is so bad. Depending on what else we have to do to this rig, I might just throw in like a cheap 128 or 240, 256 gig SSD, like just a 2.5-inch SATA drive, just to speed things along. Because this, in my opinion, can ruin a gaming PC experience. Like if you're jumping into gaming PCs for the first time, say from a console, say from like an Xbox Series X or something, and this is the experience you have, you're gonna throw this in the trash and jump right back to console gaming. So I want to give the owner a better impression than what he currently has. I just entered the pin and the screen went black. There we go, finally. I can see up top after several minutes of just basically waiting, this takes forever to do anything. Let's see, I'll click the start button for you. There we go, finally. Let's open up settings. Any second now. Any second now. This is what I've been dealing with, folks, off camera. So I'm really trying to rush, not rush this, I shouldn't use that word, but I'm trying to move quickly here just to make the point that I can be, quick in these videos if I really want to be. But when I'm dealing with stuff like this, I just, like what am I supposed to do in this situation? I can't even open the frickin' settings window. It's that bad. There we go, finally, I had to jiggle it a little bit. All right, so what I'm gonna do, I think my method of operations here is I'm gonna run each of these burn-ins independently. So FirmArc first, which is gonna stress the GPU, and then Prime95, which is gonna stress the CPU. And we're gonna use Hardware Monitor to monitor those temperatures individually. And then if everything checks out on those fronts, we'll run both simultaneously, again, make sure that temperatures are okay, and that should allow us to rule out a thermal issue entirely. So let's start with what I expect will be a problem, if any, based on the owner's description. That's going to be FirmArc. I just opened it up. I'm waiting here. There we go. Okay, that wasn't too bad. And actually, I believe this program has like a built-in temperature monitor. You can see down there. So we're going to go ahead and just run the standard 1080p burn-in. And our temperatures are going to be over here on the bottom left-hand side. I expect these for a 3070 to be somewhere around mid to upper 80s. This is a fairly beefy EVGA AIB. The cooler's pretty robust as well. But if this gets above 80, if this touches like 90, well, this is a hot spot, so I'm really looking at GPU temp here. If this touches somewhere in the 90s, we've got a problem. But judging by the way it's reacting initially, I don't think we're gonna get anywhere close to that. We are coming up on 20 minutes now, and temperatures still look phenomenal. I don't think we're a degree above 70, actually. I think our hot spot is just over 83. Yeah, so looking very good. I don't see any issues on the graphics card side of things. If we had some sort of software instability or issues with temperatures, those definitely would have shown up with this FirmArc burn-in. By the way, under prolonged stress tests like this, it is normal for a graphics card to be hot to the touch, especially its backplate. Heat tends to rise, right? And the GPU is directly under this section of the card. And again, if the GPU itself is getting upwards of 70 or 80 degrees Celsius, I mean, that's not far away from being able to boil water. And so it should be hot to the touch, right? And that is by design. But what's gonna happen when I start this Prime95 stress test? If we do have an issue with, say, our AIO or the way it's mounting to our CPU, this test will definitely reveal that. Let's go ahead and start the torture. And what I'm gonna do while this is running is pull up Hardware Monitor. Now we have CPU temperatures down here. I know it's small, but we'll be able to monitor how these change with time. So right now we are at 60 degrees Celsius. The average at idle was around 40 degrees once the AIO equalized for reference. So now we're at 63, and we're probably gonna let this run for maybe, let's say 20 or 30 more minutes. Since this is an AIO, it's gonna take a bit longer for the fluid in the loop to thermally equalize, so we'll let it play out and monitor any abnormalities. Oh, well, and one of those abnormalities might be right now. I was getting some B-roll of that CPU temperature. Everything's just super laggy. Now, it's not totally uncommon for a system to be this laggy when, again, every single CPU thread is being torture tested. So you're not gonna have much leeway in terms of running other programs and things, right? But this is pretty bad. I mean, I should be able to just, there we go. It's a little better. And again, I can't really say how much of this is the responsibility of the hard disk drive. That could still be our bottleneck here in terms of smoothness. So just something I wanted to point out, and it's looking more and more like we're gonna end up swapping out that hard disk drive, or at least installing something much faster to load a new, fresh copy of Windows. Don't worry, the PC hasn't shut off or anything. I think it just timed out. And yep, there we go. Temperatures are, where are we? Temperatures, CPU, 83 degrees. It says that at one point it reached 99 degrees. That means it is throttling itself to stay on. The system is trying its best not to have to shut off. When T-junction is hit, which is the maximum operating temperature of a CPU, it will try to dial back both voltage and frequency to keep the system running, because the worst case scenario, apart from the rig actually just like blowing up, is for the rig to shut down abruptly, right? You don't want to do that. You don't want to lose sensitive information or anything like that for the user, right? So it's going to dial itself back and run extremely slow in order to hopefully run at a lower temperature. You can see our CPU there is an Intel Core i7-10700KF. So no integrated graphics. It is an unlocked SKU, so there is the potential here for us to have some sort of manual overclock. I'm not seeing any like serious sign of that, but one thing we can do at least is hop into the BIOS later and revert back to stock, maybe even undervolt a tad to get these temperatures more in line with where I think they should be for a 10th gen i7. These are our max temperatures again at the package and at the core, 100 degrees Celsius. That is T-junction. And right now we're pulling about 125 watts, but you can see our peak was about 160. So the chip is wanting to pull more power and can occasionally, but at the expense of temperature. And essentially what this means is that the owner is losing performance because his chip is getting too hot. You can see our operating all-core frequency right here is around 4 to 4.1 gigahertz, but it should be quite a bit higher than that. Now again, this is with Prime 95, which is going to make your CPU run quite a bit hotter than most other programs today. That's just by design, right? It's why I run it, because it's a worst case scenario. But if we don't find anything in the BIOS that suggests we're running some sort of like crazy overclock, and if the board isn't pumping unreasonable voltage through the chip while under heavy load, what else can we do? One crucial bottleneck could be this AIO. Now this is a 240 mil, which should be enough for a 10700KF, especially when you're not, again, severely overclocking. And we've got decent airflow in this chassis as well. The fans do spool up when the chip is under load. I can feel quite a bit of fluid moving through these tubes, and I don't actually think we have any severe clog because I don't feel heat collecting in one tube much more than the other, which is typically a telltale sign. You could also feel here in the pump chamber area if heat was collecting. It is hot, but I don't think this is our problem. Mounting looks good, the screws are all tightened down. This is the correct mounting gear for an Intel layout. So yeah, I don't see this really being a huge cause for concern. And for folks who are wondering if this is the correct layout for this, obviously, ideally, you'd want to have your barbs down here so that air collects up top in your radiator and you don't get that churning sound that you typically hear in layouts like this with the pump and the block. Now the barbs are sufficiently higher than the pump, so I don't think we have an issue with the pump life or the pump starving. Let's say it's overheating because air is collecting in here. These Asetek style pumps are not strong enough to consistently pull small pockets of air down and into the chamber. They'll typically collect up top and gurgle a bit, so they'll make some noise, but unless this loop is just vastly underfilled, no, this is not a problem. Relax, internet. It's not a problem. So for some reason we have XMP enabled, which should have its DDR4 running at around 3600 megahertz, 18, 22, 22, 42 CAS, but, CAS and timings I should say, the CAS is the first number. But what I noticed further down here, probably already spotted it, why does he have a manual frequency set to 2800? That seems just a bit weird. I'm not sure why he would have conflicting settings there. What I'm going to try to click here, let's just do auto. I think that's going to allow this to override. And as you can see here, it's running at 2000 megahertz. That's probably because of this manual setting, which is overriding the XMP setting, which should already be overriding stock DDR4 frequencies, which is around 2133 megahertz, somewhere around there. I could mess with undervolting a tad and just trial and error it, but I really prefer not to for stability's sake. I don't want to give this back to the owner, him not know what I did, and eventually, due to like silicon degradation or whatever, the system starts acting up again, right? He's not going to know where to go. So that would suck. I'm kind of in a bind there. There's not much else I can really do in the BIOS front. I mean, you can see idle temps are pretty good for the CPU. For a saturated AIO, 40 degrees Celsius is perfectly fine. If we had a severely clogged AIO, these temperatures would be way higher. We've seen that several times in this playlist. So while Windows is loading back up, here's a bit of insight into what I'm thinking currently based on what we've seen so far and where I'm headed with my methodology. The graphics card seems fine to me. It passed firmark with flying colors, stellar temperatures, it didn't run very loud, and we didn't see any stability of any kind. So let's set that variable aside completely. I don't think that's an issue with this rig at all. The CPU, yes, it did thermal throttle in Prime 95. It scaled back frequency across all 8 cores in the 10700KF to 4 gigahertz or just above that. Honestly, I mean, I know it's not optimal, but for a lot of chips that don't necessarily win the silicon lottery, that's not totally unheard of. I could probably get my own rigs in this office to somewhat throttle in Prime 95, and that's by design. That software suite, again, is supposed to stress your CPU beyond anything you'd reasonably encounter during, a typical day's use. And that's why I use it, because as long as the system appears stable, albeit throttled back a bit, with Prime 95, it's unlikely to be unstable in any other situation. I'd be willing to bet a lot of the owner's complaints, and to be fair, he only had 2 sentences worth in his description, but He complained a lot in person, and you guys don't see that in videos. A lot of his complaints about games not loading up, games not initializing, or games loading up and then crashing, or just hanging, just exhibiting weird issues have to do with that hard disk drive. It's so loud I can hear it from here. It is working nonstop. Windows has just been, well, more or less idle. Some startup programs, I'm sure, are bogging things down. But not much is going on right now, and the disks are just, they are whirring away. So let's see here, what's Crystal Disk Info gonna show us? So this is a 7200 RPM drive. You can see they're up top. Power on count, 910. Power on hours, 6,335. Trying to see if there's any, I mean, this tells us a bit. If there's anything else that'll indicate how old this drive is. Either way though, I mean, despite this being like a good health check, I'm not inclined to keep this drive as is. I mean, it shouldn't be in 2026 the primary boot drive. There's just no excuse for that at this point. And yes, SSD prices are starting to go up a bit, but you can see from this video just how awful the performance is of this system, despite it having pretty decent hardware otherwise. This can ruin the experience. It's worth spending a bit more money to get an SSD. Even if it's a slightly smaller drive in terms of capacity, dealing with this here is not worth it. So let's see here. The hard drive gets loaded in from the front of this case, which is actually pretty cool. I know Fantex and a few others did this in the past. Yes, it is a Seagate Barracuda. And again, this is a 2 terabyte hard disk drive. So it's definitely, you know, solid for like Steam game storage. And like I mentioned earlier, since this does check out health-wise in Crystal Disk Info, the number of writes, the number of power cycles, etc., this would be the perfect use case for Steam games. I don't see a reason why the owner should just toss it out. I'm going to leave it installed, but I'm going to install an additional storage drive with Windows on it, and with the owner's permission, which I'm still waiting on, so it might be tomorrow by the time you see me again. With the owner's permission, I'm going to wipe this drive clean. I want this just to fire up and then load right into Windows quickly. Once we get the green light from the owner, then we'll have, hopefully, a much faster running system again. I'll see you in a few hours.
Day 2.
That right there, ladies and gentlemen, is authorization from the owner. So what we can do is kick things off with this thumb drive right here, which has a very stripped down version of Windows 11 on it. We're gonna leave his hard disk drive installed, and when we boot into this USB drive, we're going to wipe his hard drive from there, from that interface. Then we're gonna be able to select the M.2 we install in a second and point the Windows installation to that drive, so that from now on, his system feels much snappier, especially upon startup and loading in between programs. Now the drive I'm giving him is from Kioxia. It's an XG8. Now this brand, we've done quite a bit with in the past. They do a lot of B2B stuff, but they also have like more end user, sort of like consumer grade solutions, and the XG8 is really no exception there. You can find it for a decent price, and it's fairly fast as well. This is one that I've used gently, so we're gonna have to wipe this, reinstall. Again, it's gonna be a very stripped down version of Windows, which is gonna give him tons of room on this drive to store more important programs, and then he's gonna have that hard disk drive for Steam games and really whatever else he wants. Now we'll just install our Windows USB and direct the BIOS to boot from it. That should be this guy right here. I'm gonna shuffle through here a bit. Again, this is stripped down, so you probably won't see certain prompts here that you will on like the bloated version of Windows, and that is by design. That's exactly how I like it. I'm gonna click I don't have a product key right now. We can give them like a $10 or $15 one from our sponsor, VIP SCD key. No problem there. Click next. We're gonna do custom install. Now this is important. So you can see drive 0, this is the hard disk drive. So this has Windows on it. I believe this is that partition there. It's about 1,862 gigabytes. And then further down, you'll see drive 1. Actually, wow, is this also a 2 terabyte? I didn't realize my Kioxia drive was a 2 terabyte drive. All right, well, all the better for him, I guess. What we're gonna do actually is completely delete every single partition on both of these drives. We're gonna clean them out entirely and start from scratch. Now, I'm not exactly sure which is which. I have to go back and double check. It depends on a few things, how you would calculate like the total available size per drive. So what I'm gonna do is from here, I'm gonna actually shut the system down and then disconnect his hard disk drive. I'm gonna leave it just disconnected entirely and make sure that the Windows boot partition installs on the correct drive, that again being our Kioxia M.2. And now we can just sit back and relax. This should only take a couple of minutes. We are just about there. Now I've pre-recorded with Windows on the old hard disk drive how slow it actually is to start up for the first time. So what I'm gonna do, once we have the hard disk drive reconnected, and then we're gonna hop into Disk Manager and set up a blank partition for Steam games and stuff so that it's actually usable, is I'm gonna show you a side-by-side between the two. We're gonna start from no power, and we're gonna just time how long it takes for the system to boot into Windows with both an M.2 and a hard disk drive. You're gonna see them next to each other, and well, I'm sure most of you know where this is headed. It's going to be night and day. I think the owner will greatly appreciate how much snappier his rig is now going to be. So here we go, pretty straightforward. Reconnect SATA data as well as SATA power. Then we can reinstall the front panel, and we can fire it back up this time with everything reconnected. Make sure it lights up. Yep, looking good. Now that we've loaded back into Windows, we can swing down to the search bar. We're gonna type in DISK, and you can see right here, create and format disk partitions is one we wanna click within the control panel. So this is the disk management window. And below, you'll see two different drives. This is what we wanna see, right? The first drive, obviously, disk 1 is that's the Kioxia drive. So our M.2 with our Windows boot partition installed. That's great to see. You can see we have about 2 terabytes available. The other drive though, disk 0, this is the one with 1863 gigs available. This is the hard disk drive. Right now it's sitting with the entire space unallocated. So if you downloaded Steam and you were trying to direct the program to install games to this drive, it probably won't see it because Steam doesn't recognize that this drive has any available space right now. Now, the way to fix that is we're gonna right click over unallocated space and we're gonna click create simple volume. From here, you can tell it how much space you want to allocate for this volume. I'm just going to go with the whole full amount available. We'll click next. You can assign it a drive letter. You usually just stick with what it recommends. And then we'll click next again. Now this we can label as, we'll just say games, since I know that's what he wants to use it for. So now this drive will be called games inside the My PC window, etc. We'll click next again and then finish. And check this out. It's going to format and boom, there we go. We now have a 2 terabyte hard disk drive with a full volume ready for games, other programs, pretty much anything you want. And a real quick way to confirm this, in the This PC window, you can see now both drives. The local disk, see this is where Windows is installed. This is the Kioxia drive and our games drive. Disk D, this is the hard disk drive with about 1.81 terabytes of free space. I think it's actually installing graphics drivers. We reconnected to the internet, so I think it's installing some sort of like basic VGA driver for the 3070. What we can do as well is hop onto NVIDIA's site, make sure that the correct up-to-date driver is installed for this particular card. But yeah, don't worry about that. That is actually pretty normal for a fresh Windows install. And now, as promised, here you have it, a side-by-side comparison of the Windows startup process. It is extremely fast with the Kioxia drive. This is indicative of most M.2s. They are pretty much all going to be way faster than an older spinning disk drive, even a 7200 RPM one. And I think it really speaks for itself. There's not much more I really need to say here. Now, obviously, this isn't totally apples to apples because the owner did have programs installed on his Windows partition with the hard disk drive that we don't have to worry about with a very clean install on the M.2. We also don't need to sign in with the M.2 because obviously I want to leave that for the owner to set up himself if he desires. But it still just comes nowhere close. If we had done a fresh install on the hard disk drive and still held them side by side, it would still be a huge difference. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is what I think was the crux of this owner's woes. The fact that maybe he was waiting too long for a game to open, maybe it wasn't opening fast enough and he tried opening it a second time, and then you get some weird behavior there. Or maybe the system would just hang way longer than he expected it to. If he's looking at, say, a friend's PC and he's saying that his is super snappy, but he's on an M.2, he's on some sort of solid state drive, right? Then his expectations for this rig might have been way higher than they should have been, considering Windows was on a hard disk drive. But that should be a thing of the past now. Games are not going to load quite as quickly as they would if they were installed on the NVMe. But the good thing is this Kioxia drive is, again, unexpected. It's a 2 terabyte drive. So if he really wanted, he he could throw a ton of his more important games, maybe the games where loading screens and stuff like that can be a bit dragged out, say like GTA 5, right? Logging into that game, especially online, could take some time, so having that on an NVMe could help out. But he has the flexibility now, whereas he didn't before. I think that's going to make a world of difference in the long run for its usability. I'm sure you could imagine how baffling it would be for somebody who's not super tech savvy, how a rig with a card as expensive as an RTX 3070 in it, heck, even a Core i7 from a few generations ago on Intel's side of things, could be this slow when opening basic programs. Surely it's not the fault of the CPU. It can't be the fault of the graphics card. We rolled both of those out earlier on in this video. It is the fault of the source boot drive. Windows on a hard disk drive in the 2020s at all, any, say 2020 onward, it just makes zero sense. In fact, I think you could have made a case earlier than 2020 that hard disk drives for boot disks just make no sense. It will literally ruin your gaming experience. It will ruin your productivity experience. You could throw extremely expensive hardware into a rig, but if you install Windows on a hard disk drive, it really doesn't matter. And so hopefully, for anyone still running a hard disk drive, this has proven the point. I mean, just this side-by-side comparison again, it is massive how big a disparity there is between the boot time of an NVMe and the boot time of a hard disk drive. Make the switch, folks, if you haven't already. I'm very glad we were able to help this one out, and I think the owner will be able to enjoy his rig properly now for the foreseeable future. Now, if you or someone you know has a broken PC, maybe one that doesn't power on, maybe one that doesn't send a signal out, or has weird stuttering issues, games tend to load like forever, or you're just not getting the performance you expect, be sure to submit a form linked in this video's description. That's tied to our Fix or Flop site, where you can submit photos, a description, spec list of your PC, anything that you are concerned about, especially if you live in the Central Florida area. We'd love to take a look, and we'll do it for free. Again, that's thanks to your viewership. Thank you so much for watching this one, and thanks for learning with me.